Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I've got a Feel Good conversation that's got a very sort of different feel to some of my usual conversations. Today's guest is Ian McHale. You may know him as the Northeastern coordinator of Connecting Consciousness, which for those of you that know, this is the huge social sensation or collective or movement associated with Simon Parkes and the wonderful work that he does. My guest is also an author of 2 books, and he's currently writing his 3rd. He's an artist. But actually, as we have this conversation, you'll learn so much more about the little steps that he's taken to realize that the world that was sold to us is different. How he came about those realizations and possibly some of the steps that he took to recognize that. We also talk about what it's like to be slightly on the outside of things and to not see things from the same mindset, the possibility of starseeds even. There's so much that has come out in this very gentle and charming and quintessentially English conversation. I just think it's thoroughly charming. I just love it, and I hope you do too. So it's a different pace, and it is awesome, awesomely charming, and gentle and polite, very much like Ian's energy. But anyway, I'll let you decide. Have a listen in, and hopefully you'll find Ian just as charming as I have today. So it's my absolute pleasure today to bring on my guest, and that is Ian McHale. Ian, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Yes.
Well, it's lovely to have you on and to have the opportunity to have a real natter, because we were first introduced just a couple of months ago by mutual friend Felix Hyde, and you invited me to come and talk on the Connecting Consciousness, the Northeastern group. And as I was talking to you and in our email interactions, I thought, wow, this person's amazing. This is somebody I want to interview. This is somebody who's got, I don't know, got something to share. And so, it started from there, didn't it? So I guess I've already introduced you, and anyone that's watching will already know that you are an author of 2 books, and you've got a 3rd on the way, which is as yet untitled. I'm guessing there was a time before you started writing. Can you tell me, share with me, what was life like before you kind of awakened to this idea of writing the kind of books that you do? I'm really curious.
Well, where do you start? Prior to writing, and by the way, I hadn't written before.
Wow.
So it was just jumping in at the deep end, really. I did study. I had the inclination to, prior to writing my first book, and did quite a lot of research into how you do it. And a lot of it seemed very formulaic. I mean, I love reading. Excuse me. I'm a voracious reader myself. I'll come on to that in a moment. And I thought, it's all very plotting this and that, which is not what I wanted to do. So it's done, I flatter myself, in a Joycean stream of consciousness type of writing. And the fact that I mentioned I was a voracious reader. I owe that to my parents, my late parents, who from a very early age encouraged me to read. I mean, being a child of the 60s, I think by the time I was 10, I'd read everything Enid Blyton wrote. And then it moved on to Greek mythology and adventure stories, Verne and H. Rider Haggard and Conan Doyle, and I had very rich inner life, because the world around me, even as a child, I just thought, this is all very strange, what people are doing and taking so seriously. And it was a wonderful world to go into, all those different worlds you can go into by opening the pages of a book. And sometimes called comfort reading or escapism, but it's all healthy. It exercises those muscles of the imagination. And as Einstein said, imagination is the most powerful force in the universe. And it just went on from there, really. When I got to my mid to late teens, I started to come out of that shell, that inner world. I thought I'd have a go at it all myself. Some of those exciting things I'd read about, and I've never really stopped.
So 18. I had this idea that maybe you had this awakening moment, that you left school and did a kind of job that you kind of hated a little bit. That's, isn't it funny how we have these stories about people, because when the titles of your book just sound so awakening and in my imagination, I always think that these kinds of awakenings happen because we somehow find ourselves in a box, or we find ourselves going down a particular route and thinking, what's life about? There must be more.
Yeah, absolutely. Job-wise, I mean, you name it, I've probably done it. It sounds a bit arrogant, but
I have a husband like that as well. Someone will say something about postman, and he'll say, "I've done that."
and why not? Because ultimately you're interacting with other human beings doing certain things, and within a certain cultural ecology that is worth exploring. It certainly was to me. I mean, obviously, like most youngsters in the by then the late 60s, early 70s, you have a paper round and it moves on to other things and so on. I got sacked from the paper round because I was spending too long reading the newspapers. That didn't last very long. But from then it just went on and on. I was in education, mainstream education, but I gave that up because it was interfering with my learning. It was becoming, the further I went with it, the more and more it got compartmentalized. Any form of, as I'm aware now, that any form of right brain creative thinking stigmatized, because it's concentrated on, well, the aim of education is to get your first job, isn't it, and become a good timekeeper, a good worker, and obedient. And unfortunately, I could never be pinned down to any of those. So I spent the last 40 years now, more or less, as an entrepreneur doing all sorts of things, living on one's wits, doing
busking,
lots of things. Also, musically, I've unfortunately not. My brother has the musical talent. He was a concert grade pianist in his late teen. A high grade of. I had the art gene ability, drawing and painting, but I'm just wondering. There's so much to go at. What was my first self-employment? Give me a moment to think, because I don't want to.
It's okay. I mean, when I go back, it's quite shocking, some of the jobs I've done. So while your unconscious mind is working on that one in the background, tell me about the motivation for It Awaits Us. What's that about? Because, I mean, it sounds like such an enticing title.
It came about. I used to listen to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Oh, yeah, JP.
JP.
Yeah,
JP.
I've been on the show, actually.
Oh, gosh. And I was listening on the first and second Sunday evenings of every
Yeah.
month to
Yeah.
this chap in Whitby called Simon Parks, who was saying things that made a huge amount of sense to me.
Yeah.
And I joined Connecting Consciousness just as a member, and at the same time, my workaday life, I'd built up a portfolio of rental properties in the early 2000s when I closed down the gallery in Scarborough. I thought, gosh, I need to actually do something that's purely aimed at making money, with the destination thinking of, and then when I've got myself comfortable, I can then continue with my creative endeavors.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it went well enough for 10 years or so, but then the business started to slide. We had the whole business with the property crash and one thing and another, and I ended up losing the portfolio and nearly went bankrupt.
Oh wow.
And so you have to pick yourself up and start again. And looking back with the 2020 clarity of hindsight, it's quite amazing how the universe works, because it was a path I was on that wasn't really me. I'm not a businessman. I enjoyed thoroughly my role really in that enterprise was hands-on project manager, mixing with trades guys and meeting people, doing the deals, conversation, communicating with people. However, it all came to a crash, and after joining Connecting Consciousness and going to a seminar, a day-long event, and then meeting Simon, a vacancy arose to become the coordinator for the Northeast. The Northeast, for our purposes, is Sheffield in the south, all the way up to the Scottish borders, and
That's
then
a massive area.
halfway across the country. So it's like 7 counties, effectively.
Yeah.
And at the time, there were 80 goodly folk in the Northeast. Now there are 1,000, just under 1,000. And overall, the organisation had 3,000-ish worldwide, and it's now over 100 and something thousand.
Yeah.
So obviously I became more and more involved in it. And this sounds a bit of a cliche and silly to say, but literally one morning, I just had this urge, this feeling to open up the laptop and start writing. And 18 months later, I'd completed both books, based on ongoing research, knowledge I had, and that's, in a nutshell, that's the genesis of how it all came about. The motivation for writing them was to present to folk who are perhaps on the verge or on the cusp of waking up to what's really going on in the world, but presenting it in a manner that doesn't immediately invoke the cognitive dissonance of oh no, that's a load of rubbish, or I don't believe that, conspiracy theorist. And just mentioning conspiracy theories, the trouble with them is that we're running out of them now because they're all coming true. So
yeah, they seem to be becoming realized much quicker and quicker. There was a time when there was a little bit of a time lapse, and now it's happening in real time, isn't it?
it is indeed. And so how do you present information that doesn't look as if you're preaching or proselytizing or saying, oh, you need to believe this. There's plenty of folk out there doing that. So I've wrapped them all up in all the information up in the genres of mystery, thriller, romance. Think X-Files, Doctor Who, Tales from the Unexpected, Sons of Anarchy. So it's a shotgun approach, but it's written also a romance and a mystery based in Scarborough locally and other areas, which I won't mention as a spoiler, and using two young couples in their 20-somethings and their reflections of the world and how the journey they go on when they discover things ain't quite as we are told they are. So in a broad brush, that's the reason. But also, quite a few lovely feedback I've had. Some folk have said, well, when I read that, I thought, that can't be true. And then I researched it. Oh, yeah, it is. Gosh. And it's encouraged and helped and motivated people to then not listen to me or anybody else, but do their own research, discover, and that is so important. And if I manage to do that, I feel I've been successful. That's empowering people to use those tools that we have just to get out of that box you mentioned, because people, I read somewhere that the definition of a true scientist is somebody who doesn't believe in anything. What he or she has is a hypothesis, and that is valid until such time comes when some more information comes in that's validated, or some more facts, and then that hypothesis changes to embrace that. Compared to believing in something, this is what I believe in. So you put yourself in a box and close the lid, and anything that comes that's contrary to what you believe in there is immediately rejected,
or not seen.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's quite shocking what's gone on in the world, from like 2020 onwards. But of course, as you and I know, the story actually started a long time ago. And the situation we find ourselves in now is something that's been building for decades, centuries. And I think also because of that long gap, we just can't imagine how that has occurred. I mean, most of us don't even know what colour socks we're going to be wearing in a week.
Yeah. Mine are usually odd. The different coloured ones. Yeah.
I've got odd socks on today. They've got a slightly different pattern. But I mean, it doesn't sort of ring true that there might be people that have a very long-term agenda out there that they've been planning for centuries. I love the ethos behind the idea of your book. I think a lot of people, as they awaken, especially if as they awaken to new information, especially if it all of a sudden makes sense to them, we all often want to share what we've learnt with people around us, and it's very, very difficult. Wow. And so what has this given you, since you've written It Awaits Us and Pandora's Guest, and obviously, Pandora's Quest, and you're like working on the third book right now? What do you think, like, writing these books has given you as a person? How's it changed your life?
Well, I have a lot of interaction with a lot of really wonderful people who are awake and aware and so knowledgeable about so many things, and one feels part of something, that
Yeah.
that there's, again, I don't wish to appear as if I'm trying to flatter or self-aggrandize, but we are light workers. The work you're doing, you're a light worker. You're spreading the light. One analogy of that, because analogies are often the best way to get information across that words don't encompass.
Mm.
And an analogy that I've used recently in my writing is, imagine a huge globe of the world, half the size of a house, and it's suspended in midair.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, all over it, the little pinpricks of light, and they all start to spread, and it starts to illuminate it. And that is all the raising of consciousness that's going on in the world, and rippling out into the collective, the light that's pushing that darkness away. And we are going in an upward spiral of evolution. We are ascending in upwardly to where we should be, but have been prevented, as you alluded to a few moments ago, by something that's so immense that most people don't see it. It's so big.
But it's so big we can't see it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But
glimpses. Chesterton said that we just get occasional glimpses through rents and tears in the celestial fabric. Well, that's the work goodly folk like yourself, my attempts, and what others are doing are rendering that now, and we are beginning to see what's truly out there. Yeah,
I love that. Before we started recording, you were talking about limiting beliefs, and how they play into our understanding of reality. What limiting belief do you think you had that kept your life in place as it was until you had that moment where all of a sudden everything fell into place? And what beliefs did you have that eventually had you connect the parts of the story? Because there must have been two different mindsets. There would have been one that had kept you very much in the day-to-day narrative that most people fall in, and then there would have been some kind of belief system arising in you that made you question, or like, what was that? Like, what were the two thoughts? What kept you there, and then what opened you to something new? That's what I'm really curious about.
Well, from an early age, coming from a middle class background, it was always drilled, get qualified, get a good job, and you'll be, get a proper job, and that's what you must do, basically. So there was always that was always a strong influence. But I tried all that. I tried all sorts of things, and the only thing I was happy doing was working for myself. But again, it was financially motivated. Obviously, I was reasonable at it, but I was never focused in or particularly interested in the money. I needed it, but I was never interested in it. I enjoyed doing what I was doing. When I had an architectural antiques business, it was great fun. I've always striven to have fun, and the joy of meeting so many different people, and just being. But eventually, all those experiences have sort of coalesced into doing what I'm doing now. And now I live quite frugally, quite frankly, and it doesn't worry me at all. It was a fear. I shall have to have a quick sip of water. I've got a heater on under here because it's blooming cold.
Yeah, I should say, where are you based right now?
Excuse me. Well, at the moment, I'm in the shed.
In the shed.
Every man should have a shed. I built it. It's at the bottom of the garden. It's it's not a shed. It's a purpose-built office.
Yeah, and where are you based in the UK?
Scarborough in the northeast of England. Yeah,
it's one place I've never been to, but I would love to visit at some point.
Oh.
So let's read your story.
It's a wonderful part of the world. I'm just outside the town centre, and within minutes I can. I'm a lifelong biker, so I can motorbiking. I can within minutes I'm on the North Yorkshire moors, country lanes.
Very nice.
No, the shed I built as a homage to the English country village sports pavilion. I play well. I used to play tennis full time, but now I just stagger around the court in playing men's doubles for a local team, and you go to lots of little villages, and they've got these in the middle of nowhere. There'll be a wonderful wooden Victorian built pavilion, and I thought I'd like one of those, so I made my own.
Fantastic. That brought up so many memories there. My dad was a keen bowler, so I used to go to all these bowling lawns, and there's a similar vibe, isn't there?
Yeah, tennis and bowls clubs, they went hand in hand. They still do.
What I'm hearing a lot from you, Ian, is that the idea of life as it was prescribed to you as a small child really didn't appeal. Like the one size fits all just made no sense to you. No. And I'm also hearing that because of that, like you have this urge to kind of find your own way and to live life of pleasure. Now, a lot of people, I think, have been brought up into this idea of doing something that they don't like. Like they talk about their 9-to-5 grind, and people work Monday to Friday and they live for the weekends, and then they lose themselves because they can't get over how much fun they're having, and then they have to get all their fun in before Monday to Friday. So I really sort of like pick up on that from you. And then the other thing I will also pick up is the joy that you get from being yourself, but the joy that you get from being in the community and doing things for the community. Like, with your, did I read that right? Is that a good?
Absolutely, yes. Service to others is far more pleasurable and rewarding than service to self. It's mine. I want this. And as you say, soul-sapping preoccupations, as James Redfield in his wonderful book, The Celestine Prophecy.
I love that.
There's a one at the beginning of that book, and I remember you saying that you'd read it as well. And at the very beginning, there's a page and a half, which is a potted history of the last 1,000 years of human consciousness. And towards the middle of that period, the Industrial Revolution and post-industrial, human beings became more and more preoccupied with jobs, work. Well, I won't say work, with jobs, but we didn't come here for a job. We came here to work, but not for jobs. And I make a distinction between the two. And when we find what our true work is, that's where the pleasure is. It's not a hedonistic attitude I have by any means. It's a blooming hard-working one. If you want, I always say, if you want something to get done, ask a busy person. It's work is so important, and certainly I have the Protestant work ethic, but it's a work ethic that's not geared towards my own acquisition or materialism. It's a totally different kind of work.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I mean, I went to a grammar school in the southeast of England, and you know, the emphasis was put on like very much what you were talking about in your childhood. If you work hard and study hard, you'll get a career. And I always kind of like looked around, and there'd be these like little career choice books where you can pick your career, and none of that made sense to me. I just couldn't understand it. But like you, I was already having those questions like, really? We're here to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. What's that about? Like
Yeah.
life to me is a gift. It feels like such a gift. And my motivation has nearly always been to grow and to spread joy, or, or to experience love as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
And participate with others of like mind. Sport gave me fantastic. I must have been 8 or 9. I started playing tennis again, thanks to my parents for encouraging me in that. And I was saying to somebody the other day, we were reminiscing about early experiences in being involved in a sport. And for me, it was tennis, because although I wouldn't have had the vocabulary at the time, looking back, it taught me goal setting. It's as well as the joy of physical movement, and an inner discipline to learn, because you couldn't read a book and then about this is how you play tennis and then go and beat Roger Federer. You have to work. It's something you have to work at, and you have to work at it in collaboration with others. Also, you have really positive role models, as in a coach, who you learn how to learn. That's so important. And the tennis took me, as I say, all the way to traveling around England and France full time for 2 years playing. But I just couldn't make it. I played in the pre-Wimbledon grass court circuit, West Disbury, Queen's Club, Roehampton. But I just couldn't break into the higher satellite circuits. And you could always tell the Englishman, like myself, at some wonderful club in France, because myself, like other fellow Englishmen doing the same, would be on the court on our own, just practicing serve, and on the next court there'd be the Germans and Americans and Australians with sparring partners. And in those days they had the big chunky, very expensive video cameras, and a trainer, and we just had a bag of balls, a towel, and a few spare rackets. That's how we did it. But it was the amateur spirit.
Yeah, it sounds thoroughly British. I mean, I've been out of the UK for 4.5 years now, and funnily enough, Portugal is very self-deprecating as well. But like the British way of being is almost to talk ourselves down a little bit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's but that. Yes, that's very true. And funnily enough, I met John McEnroe, in the changing rooms at West Disbury. In fact, he left his socks, and I was half inclined to put them in my bag, but I handed them in. And he was a really nice, well, still is, totally different to the impression you get on the television, like so many things are. He was very quiet, very polite, very self-contained. So, but you just come across these people, and as a child, well, as a young boy, 10 or 11 years old, one of the ladies from the Fulwood Tennis Club took us to a place called Ilkley, which is not far away in Yorkshire. At the time, Ilkley and Scarborough were the Wimbledons of the North, really. And we met tennis players that were reminded me of those mythological heroes I'd read about several years earlier, these Herculean, tanned, supremely fit and powerful players, names such as Roscoe Tanner. There's a big Danish chap called Torben Ulrich. I remember sitting next to at Ilkley in the
Sounds
Players'
like a
Lounge.
powerful name, doesn't it?
Torben Ulrich. And it was the first time in my life I'd seen a man with long hair. So I was a little looking. And I mean, mine, I've tied it back. It's halfway down my back. So they were role models, and through sport gave me a lot. Without going on and on about it, sport really gave me a lot. And I coached it when I came back from living in Mallorca in the late 90s. I coached full time at an indoor club in North London for a couple of years, and I've coached locally here as well. And again, it's helping youngsters, well, people of all ages, but obviously encouraging youngsters to get involved in sport and all the subliminal things, that the etiquette and the discipline, self-discipline that goes with it. But in North London, I was predominantly looking after adult beginners and intermediate players, and just sharing the ability and knowledge I had to help encourage and improve their games. So again, it was mixing with people and passing on information. Yeah.
Excellent. Slight topic change here. You're talking like you've obviously been like you've experienced lots. It sounds like there's been many chapters in your life, Ian, taking you to different places and using different skills and stuff. And being of service has obviously been one of those big ones. There is the idea that in the future there might be a time when we don't have to work for money, when we may well be free. Do you think that's upon us? Do you think that's coming our way? If so, it sounds like you're already in the complete skill set to be able to indulge and enjoy it. What would we, my second part of this question, because it's a bit of a long one, is if you think that is coming, what shifts do you think we're all going to need to make to be able to enjoy it?
I'll approach it by saying, taking a macro view first. There's a ranking of planetary civilizations, and I forget the chap's name. Was it Maslow? It wasn't Maslow, but not as. You goodly folk listening can research it for yourself. Just put in. I think it's the planetary rankings. Basically,
I'll look it up while you're talking to me. Hang on. Let's see if I can find it.
A listing of planetary civilizations. It begins with M. Maslow.
I'm not getting anything right now. Hang on.
Not to worry.
Like it's bringing up Pokemon listings and all sorts. My son would be great with that,
but we'll go with Maslow. But certainly by doing a search, I can't remember the senior moment, mental block. However, the crux of what he was saying is we are at a planetary civilization 0, and out in the multiverse there are civilizations that are 20s, in the 20s and 30s ranking.
Yeah.
Now, to get for a planet Earth at the moment, or humanity, the human species, is that this process is in the liminal space of becoming from a 0 civilization to a category 1 civilization. A category 1 civilization has free energy. It takes energy from the 0 point from the universal field, and it shares it equally amongst all its inhabitants. In that civilization, there aren't countries as such, which are just man-made, divisive, named regions, etc. It also has no money. There's no, so there isn't a Babylonian money spell, which is how money came about. And that the most dangerous phase for, not every planet will go from a 0 to a 1. It's the most dangerous phase, and we're in it now, because those who've had hegemony for centuries, thousands of years, are kicking, fighting, and screaming to prevent that ascending into a higher categorization, if you want to call it that, because they lose the power and the control they have. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure folk will look it up. But it's difficult to imagine how different that world would be. No money, no energy, no energy that you have to pay through utility companies, and spend 3 to 4 months of your work. 3 to 4 months a year of your labor is spent on just paying those bills, and so so there are great things ahead for us, and I firmly believe, although I said before that best not to believe things because you put yourself in a box, but I'm firmly inclined, my hypothesis is that we will achieve that. Of course, there's so many folk awakening up now, and human consciousness is rising. The Schumann resonance, the planetary sentience is rising. And there's a lovely expression I like, which says it's the little straws that tell you which way the big wind is blowing, and they're all pointing in the right way.
I love that. When you were describing the little Earth that's that has little pinpricks of light on, I feel I can sense that, and I'm very aware that at the moment there are more and more little lights coming on all the time. It's almost like every day I'm feeling that resonance. In fact, around about 2018, 2019, some of my lifelong fears started to drop away, and then at 2020, 2021, more dropped away. And so I'm realizing that my level of comfort is increasing. And I think that, I mean, there's probably going to be people that listen that think, why is your comfort increasing? We're about to go into war, or, whatever, but my own sense, my own sort of compass is saying more people are switching on.
Absolutely. At times it may not seem like it, and you still, but it is. I don't have a television. I gave it away years ago. I tend to have Radio 3 on because of the classical music, but I have to turn that off sometimes because the Neurolinguistic Programming. I counted once, not so long ago, that they said lockdown it was over 20 times in 40, 45 minutes, So, and it's almost as if the script is, you've got to say these certain words because it keeps programming. And don't get me started on television because I won't shut up.
I mean, you're right. I mean, on radios, my husband's a broadcaster, and when he's worked on like public channels, you really don't get any freedom in what music you can play, because you have to play certain tracks every hour. There is the programming, like you say. So as we're going into, this is my last question to you, and then I just want to find out how people can like reach you and connect with you and whatnot. But what good advice would you share right now to somebody who has got to that stage of I'm sensing that all is not as it seems. I think I'm waking up, but I'm not sure what waking up means. What would you say to them right now? Like if somebody was in front of you and you could see that they were shaken, their worldview was falling apart. What advice have you got?
Find others who are in the same boat, in the same situation, because it can be very lonely, very isolating.
Yeah.
You're pushed out onto the margin. I know a lot of people who've been ostracized by friends and family, and the pressure can be debilitating, depressing. And as humans, we're social creatures, and so we look to share with others. So I would strongly, in whatever way you can do the research and find out what's going on locally, where you can get involved, where you can step up. And just like I did yesterday, we had a mini meetup just at Bridlington, it's a seaside town just south of Scarborough, and it's just pleasant, out in nature, and with people at all levels. No, wrong word to use. That indicates a sort of vertical hierarchy, but at different stages on the journey.
Yeah.
And can share, interchange, help, support, guide, advise, and all of a sudden you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not there. It's a wonderful thing that to communicate with people, to be with people. Sometimes just listen. Don't have to talk all the time. You have two ears and one mouth. Use them accordingly.
You've got two eyes as well, and like with your eyes, you're also listening, aren't you?
And a third one, yes.
Oh yeah. How can I forget?
So yes. No man or woman is an island. So there are people out there. You might think, I'm all alone. Am I going crazy? No, there are others out there. There's all sorts of, and that in itself is a quest on its own. It can overcome that inertia to find people that it might just be via social media, eventually meeting up with people.
Actually, I think social media has been very, very useful in connecting other loners. I mean, I think a lot of people, out of all the people that I know that see a very alternative narrative to what we're shown, many of them are people who've always felt on the outside, or different, or really just not wanted to be one of the popular ones.
Yes. Yeah. And also there is much evidence that incarnated onto this planet, certainly for the past 3 generations, and more what you would call starseeded or star children who volunteered to come here at this moment in time, at this stage of the planetary evolution and the human evolution. And the first wave that came in between the 50s and 60s, they had the hardest time of it. The flower power generation, and they are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate as a 15-year-old to, or maybe a little bit younger, but I met this wonderful woman who, if she was still alive now, would be in her hundreds, and she was like my grandmother's age. She had never married, never had children, and she was a crystal healer. And she taught me loads. So there are, I mean, she had a really tough wicket. I mean, she was born, in between the First and Second World War.
Gosh, talking about meeting people, I remember I think it was the hot summer of '76. It was. I met Patricia Crowther, who was the High Priestess, the White Witch of England, High Priestess of England in Sheffield. and from her, I then went on to study Theosophy. And when I went to live in London, I had access to the Theosophical Society's libraries, and I joined the Centre for excuse me, the Psychic Research Centre for Psychic Research. So it was just from I knew there were things prior to 76, but you draw people into your orbit that you need at the time that you need them, and they may spin around your orbit and then off they go on their own trajectories, and you may or may not see them ever again, who knows. But that's part of what we are capable of doing, is bringing to ourselves those with whom we will resonate most with at that time, and we need. It does happen.
So if someone is listening in and really enjoying your gentle and curious and friendly resonance, and they're thinking, well, this might be like you, Ian, might actually be the person that's stepping up to help new people in finding their feet. How could they reach you? Would you recommend that they join Connecting Consciousness?
Yes, absolutely. I would say so, because
books.
Yes, read the books, read my books. I think they are in paperback or ebook, Kindle type version, just for a couple of quid,
And where'd you buy them from? From Connecting Consciousness?
They're actually Amazon, but the only place you can find them on Amazon, but it's just easier to go to Simon's website, simonparks.org/recommended reading, and then you can actually click on the images, and it'll take you to Amazon, where you can read 20 pages or so. They have I think it's called Look Inside, so you can have a read through 20 pages. Oh yeah, I like that, or oh no, I'm not reading that. So you have it gives you a choice before you commit to buying. But certainly joining an organization like Connecting Consciousness will immediately put you within contact of people in your local area. And contact means Zoom meetings, emails, social media, meetup. We have meetups most weekends, not every weekend, but I think we had 30 plus last year.
That's a lot.
All around the northeast. Wonderful. From just a handful of people. I think the most was over 30. One big picnic at Ripon we had in a field during lockdown. But we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it also gives you the opportunity to study at your own pace, to the level that you wish to go to.
Yeah.
A plethora, cornucopia of spiritual subjects.
Oh my goodness! Like, where do you start?
Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
Yeah. I always advise people when they say, "Oh, I've really become awoken. I've realised what's going on, but where do I go now?" I say, just pick one subject. It might be Tartaria. What's Tartaria? There's another story. Check that out. Follow one, and you'll find what's quite wonderful about this sort of research is, from going down one rabbit hole, you'll enter a warren, but everything is interlinked. Everything gets connected at some stage. So don't get overwhelmed, because you can get paralysis by analysis by studying it too much. Just one thing that interests you, because what do we do best? That's what we like doing. So whatever your interests are, whatever has interested you and interest that you will discover, invest in yourself, colonize time, it's not being selfish. It's we're born with this most amazing thing between these headphones, this brain that we have, but we unfortunately it didn't come with a user manual, so we've got to find it. Go for it, do it.
Excellent. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, and also for telling us a little bit about you as well. I'm sure people that you're connected with on Connecting Consciousness would love to hear this as well. I've kind of had this inner glow actually whilst I've been listening to you. It's really reminded me of England. That thoroughly Englishness.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's lovely.
There's a wonderful set of people. From all walks of life and all ages, and sometimes you meet people out of the blue. I just sprung to mind from yesterday at Bridlington. Towards the end of the mini meetup, we were sat on the harbour wall, must be 50 feet high, just watching the tide come in. It's a really wide beach. The tide was gently rolling in, and the sun reflecting off the water, and this little dapper chap came walking and engaged in conversation and told us all about the experiences he'd had as a young boy amongst 700 other children, boys and girls, who were evacuated from Hull to Lincolnshire during the Second World War. And then he told us stories of a bygone era about Bridlington and where we were. And when just before he left, he said, well, I still get out and about at 90 years old. Oh, bless him. And I thought, my goodness, I hope I'm as sprightly, lucid and bright-eyed as he is when I reach that venerable age. But out of the blue, and as Redfield says, there's no such thing as coincidence. It's the first insight, is realizing that people you meet, things you see or hear, at the end of the day, you created that to happen. Something, somehow, that so it's exciting what you discover, who you meet, where you go, what you do, what you see. Just be open-minded to it.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again for your time, Ian. It was an absolute pleasure, and hope to speak to you again real soon.
Thank you very much, Louisa. Bye-bye.
So anyway, that was my chat with Ian. Wasn't that thoroughly charming? Yes, I feel that kind of sense of relaxation. That sense that you get when you just had a really nice time and you've met a thoroughly nice person. That's so wonderful, and I hope Ian does come and join me again sometime. So if you are interested in connecting with him and possibly finding out more about Connecting Consciousness, please do just check out the links below in the show notes. Also, I've put in the links to his 2 books, so that, again, if you're curious and you want to read them, you can. If you found this useful, then please do feel free to share far and wide. And also don't forget to subscribe to this channel and also hit the notification bell, just so that you are made aware when some new title comes up. But anyway, I really, really love that you chose to be here today. Lots and lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.
The experience, it wasn't an awakening experience because I was already awakened, but was in 82 summer in France, when I had the most amazing experience on a train, one of those ramshackle old trains that, well, at the time they still existed on the French railways. Go back to the late 40s and 1950s, these trains. I was going to Roquefort, where they make the cheese, still my favourite cheese, because there was a tennis tournament there. And I was the only one in the carriage, and it was really hot, so I pulled down the window and just looking at the passing flat countryside. And there's a gentle rain falling. And then all of a sudden, I felt this euphoric kundalini rising, that absolute euphoria. And the whole spectrum around me just changed subtly, vibrantly. And I wasn't out of body, but I was somewhere else.
Mm.
What I could see was with such clarity. Being an artist, the colour really resonates with me, and an absolute joy, and an inner that penetrated so deeply that I was almost in tears. Emotional now thinking about it, but an exquisite bliss. I had contact with something, and I thought it was just for, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. But when we left the station, that I'd looked, and I had 50 minutes until it was due to get into Rockford, and I'd stood up to look out the window shortly after sitting down. And when everything started to come back, and I was back again, the train was pulling into Rockford. So I had the best parts of 3/4 of an hour of almost missing time there. But wherever I was, it was blissful.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a very special moment.
Yeah. I can still summon it to a certain degree, but nothing as intense as that. However, there we are.